Okay, so now that you've signed the consent form, we're going to go ahead and do the demographic survey. So that just has, like I said before, it just has like some of your information and some of your background and things about your household.
What's my ID?
Oh, sorry, don't worry about that. I forgot to fill it in. Just do everything other than the ID. Yes.
I'm going to tell you something later.
Okay.
That's a tricky question.
Oh yeah, it is. That's a tricky question for you right now. You're right.
That's intense.
I guess like currently.
Get one? I'll put two.
Yeah, put
I'll
two.
Put me and my mom. Employment status. Oh my god. I like that they have student on here.
Yeah.
It's good. That is my job.
Okay, and that number, I don't know why it's phrased like that. It's not a great phrase, but the number that they're referring to in that bracket is like, I think it's like $82,000 or something like that. I think it's $82,500.
Mine
Is
not
your
make.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day I'll make more than that. But
It's a lot. It's a lot for an individual income because a lot of people were like, "Oh, is this like household income?" I'm like, no, it's individual income. Anyway, okay, cool. So now that you have finished the demographic survey, we're gonna go ahead and start the interview.
Yay.
Man,
I'm so excited to be with you here today.
I'm glad you're so excited. I'm also excited. Okay, so we're gonna just start off by asking, have you always lived in Cobb County?
No.
Okay, will you explain how you got there then? Go ahead, go through your whole moving history, go for it.
Okay. I'm just gonna go to the short version. I was born in North Carolina. We moved around a lot, and my sister was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and then at some point around like first, second grade, we lived in Ackworth, Georgia, which is it's Cherokee County.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's Cherokee County. And so then I lived in Ackworth, so I went through like Cherokee County schools, and then after that, around third grade, I started moving around every year, and by the time I got to high school, my parents wanted to settle down, and so we kind of lived in Georgia. It was like a very economic place, but it was also it had very good schools compared to some other places, but we didn't want to go exactly to where we had been before, and so my mom researched and found that the schools were really good in Cobb County, so that's where we settled down for the last 7-ish years.
Gotcha. So, did your parents want to go to Cobb specifically for the schools then?
Yeah, that's why they came.
Gotcha. Do you like it here in Cobb County compared to where like a bunch of the other places that you live? Because you lived in a lot of places.
Yeah, I think I really like Georgia, Cobb County in general. I really liked Harrison as like a high school experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the place like Kennesaw is a really nice place to live. I think if we had to choose, we would have chosen between like Virginia. I love Virginia, but it's a lot more expensive to live there. So I think Georgia has kind of like the best of both worlds, and it's pretty great.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And you are not a homeowner, correct?
No.
Okay. And how would you describe the type of structure that you live in Cobb County? Like, is it like a house?
Yes, it is I guess you would say like single family household, and it's two stories with a basement, has 4 rooms, and it has a pretty nice front and backyard. The front yard's pretty big. The backyard's pretty small, non-existent. I don't know why.
Non-existent.
But the front yard's pretty nice. So yeah.
Okay. And what would you say was the approximate date that you moved into your Cobb County home?
It was actually, I know exactly the date. It was October 31st, 2011.
Wow.
Yeah, we moved on
Impressive.
Halloween. We bought the house in August and moved in on Halloween.
Like at night while everyone's trick-or-treating. That would be funny.
No, we got there. We actually went trick-or-treating that very first day we moved in.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but we got there when the high schoolers were getting back from school.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Anyway, we're gonna move on.
Okay.
Oh yeah, did you want a copy of your consent form, by the way? You don't have to have one if you don't want to. I'm just required to ask if you want one.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about solar in general now. So, do you have rooftop solar for your home?
No, we have sunroof to Zach.
Not quite. Tell me why you don't have rooftop solar. Is there any particular reason?
I mean, the house was built in the 1980s and we bought it and it didn't come with one and it hasn't necessarily been a priority, so.
Okay, gotcha. Did you make the decision to have solar or not have solar on your house? Or was it made for you, basically?
No, but yeah, like, by the time we bought the house, it was only, like, already, like, 20 years old, so.
Gotcha.
It just didn't come with any.
Gotcha. So, like, was there any, like, after the fact that you bought the house, was there any, like, conscious decision on anyone's part, like, thinking about whether or not you wanted to adopt solar?
No, I think when we moved into the house, there was already enough work to do on the inside, and, it just never crossed it. It wasn't a conscious decision not to do it, it just never occurred.
Gotcha. So, like, it just, like, wasn't thought of consciously. Gotcha. Okay. Well, if you had the option, would you put rooftop solar on your home?
I think the biggest thing would be the cost of how much it would take to, like, install it, and if it would be obviously beneficial to the planet, but if it would be beneficial, like, economically. So there's a possibility.
Okay. Why would you personally, like, let's say if you, like, had your own house, I guess, why would you personally want or not want solar power on your home?
Personally? I guess.
Like, what are the pros and cons to you?
Well, the pros, it would lower energy expenses in the long run, and it would be more efficient energy, more environmentally friendly. The only con with it would be the money that it would take to install whatever you need to install.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
In your opinion, do you find that there are a lot of non-economic barriers to solar, like for you personally?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't have anything against it. I don't see why not if I had the money.
Gotcha. Okay. So now we're going to look at some maps, which I forgot to describe to you, but I will right now.
Okay.
So basically, we have these maps, and you're going to get one of Georgia too. This one is of the U.S., obviously. And so on that map, you're just going to label where you think people have the most rooftop solar energy on their homes. And, like, you can draw and label however you want, and you can, like, label it with, like, words that you associate with those areas or, like, however you want to label it.
So who I think has rooftop?
Like, where you think people have the most rooftop solar, like, areas in the U.S.
In the whole U.S.?
Well, you don't have to label just one area. You can label multiple areas and just, like, have different reasonings for why you chose certain areas.
Okay.
Like, you can choose a good few places, like, wherever you think that they would have it.
Do you know the answer?
It is not a quiz. This is based on your opinion.
I just wondered if there was, like, an actual, like, in a comparison system.
No one's gonna come out and make fun of you with actual knowledge. There's nothing like that. It's like, actually, you're wrong.
Okay.
You're done?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
would you like to tell me why you labeled it like this?
Yes.
I like your circles. No one has done this so far.
Really?
Yeah.
So basically, I was thinking about these little circles. I think the biggest places that are going to have them are, I feel like rural places would have them, but I also feel like cities would have them because, you know, you're trying to maximize your energy, right? So, and then also cities are probably the places that are going to have the most money. And so that's why I put, I somewhere around there's a big city. Atlanta, maybe Washington, D.C. So yeah, so basically that was the biggest thing. Like, you know, like, yeah, you know, like how, like, a lot of, like, hotels and stuff in big cities have, like, gardens at the top, and they're trying to be, like, eco-friendly. I think they would also have, like, innovators or engineers that would try to push that more than you would maybe in like a suburban area and things like that. And then I circled this state in a big thing because obviously I don't know exactly where on there they would be, but I feel like also like on the opposite side of that, like, you know, if you're more into like agriculture and things like that, although that must be, yeah, if there's like agriculture and things like that, I feel like you would also want, since you have like so many things to take care of, I feel like an additional energy source would also be very useful for them.
Is that Colorado, by the way? Because I'm bad at the West.
I think it's Colorado. There.
Okay, so what state is that? Because I don't know.
Montana?
Montana, maybe? Okay.
This is Utah.
Okay. I know that's Idaho.
Yeah, so Utah, Idaho. I'm pretty sure this is Colorado. Yes.
Okay, was there a reason that you chose Montana then, like, specifically, and also, like, the tiny, like, city areas that you mentioned?
This one I like because if it's too far north, I feel like they would have pretty harsh winters and wouldn't farm as much. I don't know, I feel like agriculturally, like, I almost drew a huge circle here, but I feel like, you know, like, agriculturally, like, this area is pretty, you know, pretty spread out, because, like, Colorado has so many, like, just fields as well. And then this one, because it's Atlanta, Washington, these are just big cities I thought of randomly.
Okay, and was there a reason, like, what was your reasoning behind choosing big cities?
Well, like I was saying, big cities, I feel like they have more resources, and they also have to, because they have so many people in them, they have to find more creative ways to provide energy that would help lower the cost for them as well.
Okay, because of, like, population, because there's a lot more people?
Because of population, they need to consider different energies, but because they have the money to consider those things, and then also, like I was saying, like, big cities are where they have the bigger thinkers, so I feel like you would have, like, more, like, especially, like, in Washington, D.C., I feel like you would have a lot of eco-friendly people there that would try to change laws and things.
Okay. And what makes the communities that you chose on the map, like, so different from people from Cobb County?
Because they're rich. No, Cobb County people are pretty rich. Well, it depends on where you are. But what makes it different? I think just type of living. These are more urban areas. And this is like a rural area, whereas like Cobb County is a lot more suburban.
Okay.
So I feel like they're kind of like more like in the medium.
Okay. So like what makes suburban areas then like different in their mindset, I guess, from like the other people who would adopt solar?
I think they would. I don't think they would be as like they have a like. I don't think they would have an eco-friendly thinking. I think they would think more just about living comfortably, you know.
Okay.
And not instead of like kind of big picture type of thing. Like I don't think that they would necessarily make a choice against it. I just think they don't consider it.
Okay, so like a lack of knowledge kind of thing about solar, or is there like some other thing coming into play there?
Yeah, I guess you could say a lack of knowledge, maybe like a lack of exposure to like how beneficial it can be or how much it actually costs to put them in there.
Okay. So do you think like further, do people care like just as much as all the other areas that you labeled that would have solar, or no?
Personally, I think they just don't care about it as much. I feel like in general, like if it's not beneficial to them, they're just gonna be like, whatever.
Okay, is that like a convenience thing? Like, does that play into it?
Yeah, I think you'd say a convenience thing.
Okay. Alrighty. So I think we're done with the US map then. We're going to move on to the Georgia map. This one's a little more personal. Okay, so it's pretty much the same exercise, so you're just gonna label the communities where you think people have the most solar within Georgia.
I felt like I always thought Augusta was like up here. I don't know why, but okay.
Now we know.
Now I know. The smarter, the more you know. Random question. I want to look up for Statesboro.
Statesboro?
Yeah. But I think, is Mercer in Macon?
Wait, what?
Is Mercer in Macon? Mercer University?
I really don't know. You could like write it out to the side if you like intend to be like, yeah, Mercer. Circle Mercer in the side.
Circle Mercer in my own made up map.
Yeah. You good?
Yeah.
Like, are you done? You can take as much time as you want to.
No, I think I'm done.
Okay.
I can't think of anywhere else.
Alrighty. So, you circled close to Cobb County, if not actually Cobb County.
Look at that. Well, I was thinking mostly about like Fulton County with like Atlanta being included in it and Sandy Springs.
So, what was your reasoning for choosing it then?
I feel like I'm saying the same things. But
You go for it, Jocelyn.
I was just saying, like, those are, like, bigger cities. They have, like, more resources and things like that, you know? And you know, like, how there's, like, really fancy houses in, like, Buckhead and things like that? I feel like maybe some of them would have solar energy. And then, like, Atlanta, like, you know, like, they have... One of the times when I went to, like, this Georgia Tech thing, they were, like, saying how, like, they want to make, like, this huge part in Atlanta that has, like, walkways and things like that. And I think, like, solar energy stuff, too, so that they can, make this city better.
Gotcha.
And then I also circled Athens a little bit, and I was gonna circle Mercer because I feel like in those places you also have like, you know, you have younger people who are more sensitive to those type of things. So I feel like they would also have a push and like, I don't know. I feel like, you know, like more liberal people thinking would be like, oh, you know, we want to protect this, we want to. I feel like students can also have a push towards acknowledging things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And what makes the areas that you labeled like different from the rest of Georgia and Cobb County too, I guess?
Well, I don't really know about the south half. I did live in Jessup, but I don't really know about the south half of Georgia. But I feel like they're a lot more.
Go ahead, say it, Jess.
I feel like they're just like a lot more like spread out. I feel like there's like obviously I haven't been there as much, but I feel like there's like a different like a cultural difference between the top half, which is like more suburban and urban, whereas like the bottom half is more like spread out. And
Okay.
I feel like, yeah.
You said a cultural difference. Is there anything in particular you were thinking about with that?
Just more country, you know, like I don't know. Do we farm a lot of stuff?
Yeah, I think in the South.
I feel like in the South, you know? So I feel like if your houses, I mean, maybe they would have other solar energy stuff, but like specifically rooftop, maybe that's not as convenient for them if there's like, they're so spread out. Although, if they're so spread out and they can have their own little energy place right there, they're never gonna miss out on energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
If you have anything more to say about the map?
I was gonna say, I don't know, I just feel like the second half, like, it's gonna be harder for me to identify with it and kind of think about what they would think because I don't know that much about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compared to, like, where you lived previously, like in Georgia, do you find there's differences between the mindset of Cobb County and the other county?
Well, Cobb County and Cherokee County are pretty similar because they're, like, right there.
Okay.
So, and I don't remember Jessup as much, so I can't really say that.
Okay. What about some of your close friends that live here within Georgia? Do you know anyone who has solar on their roofs? Like, not even just Cobb County, just, like, all of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
I don't think I do know.
Even in Atlanta?
I don't think I have any friends in Atlanta.
Gotcha.
I need to make some friends.
Why do you think that, like, the people that you know do or do not have solar?
I think it's kind of like what I was saying. I think it's more of nobody's made a conscious decision to do it. Like, even from, like, ranging from, like, people who are more, like, not middle class, but, like, who, like, live comfortably towards people who live, like, more on, like, the luxury side. I just don't think they've ever thought about it. And I don't think, not that they don't care enough, but they don't see enough benefit to go out of their way to you know, put them in.
Gotcha. Do you know anyone in particular who has like strong opinions for or against solar? Like, do you know anyone who's like extremely averse to it?
I don't think anybody's actually versed to it. I don't feel like you can come up. Are you for it? I feel like I know you because you're in ecology.
That's true. All questions will be answered after the interview.
Well, no, it's not a question. But if I knew anybody, I feel like you would be more passionate for that type of thing than my other friends.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing this, so.
Yeah. Point
taken, there you go. But, like, just, like, in general, do you feel like people, you know, like, would they have the mindset where they would want to help the environment, I guess? Or, like, do you know people who are, like, extremely one side or the other?
No, I don't know people who are against or who are really against it. I feel like people could move towards it, though. You know, I feel like people right now aren't towards it necessarily, but they aren't against it, but they would move towards it instead of against.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Compared to, I'm going to talk about the U.S. map because I forgot to mention it then.
Okay.
But, like, how you lived in a bunch of different places in the U.S. too, did you feel like, I know you were kind of young when you were there, but, like, did you feel that people's mindsets were different in the different places you live compared to Cobb County? Or compared to Georgia in general?
I feel like Virginia would have been more open to it. And, they also had, like, a lot of agriculture stuff while I was there. And they have very nice houses. And, I think I remember there, like, I feel like I could have thought of somebody there that had it versus here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, in Louisiana, I don't think they would have done it. Not that they wouldn't have done it, but it's specifically where I was.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
I don't know. I didn't meet anybody who was very environmentally friendly per se. Like, they just kind of. It was a small town. Like, it was a super small town. I think that was partly, part of it. Like I was saying, like, bigger places have, like, bigger people to push certain stuff, and it was a very small town.
Gotcha.
Did you know the downtown was a Smoothie King?
Downtown where?
So the little city where I lived,
Uh-huh.
the downtown, like, you would look up downtown Geismar, and it was a Smoothie King.
And that was it. That's really fun.
So it was very small.
I see.
Yeah.
That is very small.
Yeah, I mean, we were like 20 minutes from Baton Rouge, so I mean, that was something. But like the actual city where I lived was super small.
Interesting. Okay, so going back to like people that you personally know, what are some reasons that you think they would think of, like, pros and cons for solar power? Like, what would they think? Or what do you think that they would think, rather?
What do I think that they would think? I think that they would be for it. I think it may be money for them. Not that it wouldn't be a problem, but I don't think it'd be necessarily an obstacle. I think they would just need to be convinced that it was time worthy to do it. I think would be the biggest thing.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else in relation to that?
I don't think they have anything against
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Do you know anyone who had any particular experiences with solar power, like whether or not they actually had it on their house, just like if they had experiences with solar?
Not that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm.
Did you have any experiences with solar, just like in general?
Well, normally it's like very few places that I see it. Is this where I talk about what I told you?
You can tell me
Okay,
whatever you want.
I'm gonna tell you. So recently,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know how long it's been. A week. It's been a week. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So like a week and a half ago, I was in Colorado, and we went to this place. I was visiting, and we went to this place called Horsetooth Reservoir, and they had a really big lake and big mountain. It was super pretty, but the thing is like as we were driving on top of the mountain, it wasn't necessarily like in the mountains. It was like at the edge, so you could see down into the the city. And it stood out to me because, I was like, oh, it's so pretty. And then I asked my dad, I was like, what's that? And it just looked like a huge field of solar panels. I don't necessarily, we were too far like up to see if they were like on a rooftop or if they were just solar panels like straight up on the floor. But I don't think I've ever seen so many in one place. And it was really cool, and I wondered what they were for, and it was in the city Fort Collins.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was really cool, and I just wondered. I was like, oh, it's innovative.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But I haven't necessarily seen it. I don't feel like I'm high enough to see the rooftops in Georgia.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So have you seen like rooftops or like other types of solar in general, like in other places, or was it mainly just in Colorado?
It was mainly just in Colorado. Here, I don't think I know anybody who has. I don't know anybody who has them, and I haven't necessarily seen them per se. Like, passing by, I'm like, oh, look, there they are.
Yeah.
Although maybe in a city, I feel like I've seen them in cities.
Okay.
Yes.
But like in general, like where you live and stuff, they're not like really noticeable or anything.
No, not that I've seen. Not
Yeah.
in Kennesaw, at least.
Okay. Well, I feel like I have one more question, but I forgot what it was. Yep, don't remember. It's not happening. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for participating with me. I had a great time. We had some nice laughs.
Yeah, my pleasure.
But yeah, it was very good. Thank you for doing this with me.